Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now then, it's here. It's actually here. I ordered this about I know you don't know what it is yet, but bear with me. I ordered this about 2 years ago. And what we've got is an Exposure 3510 CD player. Now there's been a couple of prototypes floating around shows. I don't think it was at this Cranage just gone, but the previous Cranage, there was one in the Ophidian room. And at Bristol, there was, I think this Bristol and previous Bristol, there was 3510 CD player, all ready for production, but they had horrendous problems with certain parts that they couldn't, suddenly the supply dried up. So it has taken a couple of years from almost a finalised design to dealers actually getting stock. And I have to say, ordered it 2 years ago. I had a couple of people who were waiting for it. Have all gone and bought other things now. So it's a big shame, to be honest. I think it's a shame. It's going to be interesting as well because I've kind of established my sort of product range CD player wise. I love the Atolls, as you're probably getting bored of hearing, and they're sort of covering the 650, the 1250, the 1850, and then the sort of 4000 plus level. This kind of falls between, because it's 2,500, so it's more than a CD200, but obviously not in the same, up there in the echelons of the 2-box and the 400 that Atoll do. It's kind of closer to things like Riga Saturn, and it's probably in styling closer to the Saturn as well because it's a top loader. I mean, there is a sort of element of people. Some people like a conventional looking player. They don't want anything quirky. They want a front load or whatever else. Some people like to have like the top load, like the puck, and the fact it's manual and there's no draw mechanism to fail in it or anything like that. There's sort of two schools of thought. The fact it's British built is important to some people, that sort of thing. So we'll see. It'll have to go some to beat the CD200 Atoll because there's an awful lot of things out there that I'm trying to think of customers who bought 200s to replace other things. Certainly the Roxanne Black, which is a wonderful sounding player. I love the Black, but the CD200 Atoll is better, even though it's kind of half the price. So this is going to have to be really good. I know it's really good because I've heard it in isolated situations. What I haven't done, because literally unboxed it 3 minutes ago, is heard it in systems I know, in rooms I know, and compared it directly to things like the Atoll and the Riga Saturn. So that's going to be really interesting. I think there's enough people out there who are deeply into Exposure, because Exposure do wonderful products. Everything they do is really good. There isn't really a duff product in their range at all. I think there's enough of a following for Exposure for this just to sell on the basis of that. If it was better than the Atoll CD200, that would be something, actually. But we'll see. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I'll come back to you on that one, because obviously I've got to run it in and I'll use it in the shop, and then I'll come back with a sort of firmer opinion on that. But we'll see. So I'm just going to move the camera and we'll have a little scoot around it and just show what's going on. There is a remote. I actually got the remote out of the box because some people moan that I don't get the remotes out. Full system remote. So if you've got a 2510 or a 3510 amp, works with that. Dropped it. It's fine. This is fine. Let's have a look around it. Okay, yeah. So front panel, very simple. There's hardly anything on there when you look at it. Big clunky power switch. So on. There's no standby mode or anything like that. It's just straight on. I tend to say leave it on as long as you can, really. They do benefit, a lot of these higher end players do benefit from being left on because they just sound better. They just seem to need that warm up time to really do the thing, to be honest. Controls wise, all we've got is stop, play, backwards, forwards on the track select. If you want to do straight to track and that sort of thing, or any sort of programming, that's all on the remote. So it can still do it, but it's not cluttering the front panel with loads of buttons, which helps the costings of the player, and it just keeps it looking cleaner, really. I've started opting for black. Now, initially when I was doing Exposure, because I sort of revisited Exposure after a while of not doing it, basically when I got this shop, actually, and I thought the silver looked very modern, and it sort of gave Exposure a little bit more of a sort of, like I said, a sort of a more modern look about it, really. I think that's what I was looking for. But pretty much everybody who's ordered Exposure from me has ordered in black because they like the fact that the black and the gold script with the red LED, because the silver is black script with blue LED, and this is harking back to what exposures of old looked like. And a lot of people who buy exposure have always bought exposure because it's one of those products, a bit like Name, it's a bit like Riga, that people just stick with it because everything you buy from exposure is wonderful. They're just such attention, the usual thing, attention to detail, and designed by people who actually like listening to music as well, and it really it does show. So yeah, now we get quirky because it is a top loader. It's like the XMCD. It's got the sliding top. First impressions of that is it feels a bit flimsy. It's sort of a bit, but actually it kind of does the job really. It's similar. I mean, the actual material it's made out of is very similar. If you remember, you may not do. When Name brought their first CD player out called the CDI, that had a very similar material but hinged. And the CDS, their top flight player in the early days, had a similar material on the lid as well. So it's in good company. Like I say, it does the job. When you come to the puck, because obviously, because you haven't got a mechanism that closes and clamps down, you need a separate clamp. So this is your clamp. The magnet is really strong on that. It's probably one of the most effective clamps I've ever used, like the XMCD actually. So to play a CD, just stick it in there. A bit of Blue Nile. I think it used to be on the Linn label, didn't they? A long time ago. This one's, I don't know I'm not sure where this came from. Can't actually remember the name of the. It had. I can't remember what the track is now. Yeah, there was a classic one that everybody used in demonstrations, Blue Nile. I'm completely going off on a tangent with that. It'll come to me. I might just suddenly come back in again with what that album was because I can't remember at the moment. Yeah, so there you go. And you basically close the lid. It reads the disc, and there we go, ready to go. So play. Track select. That's it. What more do you need, really? So yeah, let's have a look at the back panel. Okay, so back panel. Not an awful lot going on here, really. There's got an IEC, standard IEC socket, so that means that you can actually use better cabling on there if you want to use a better mains lead. Two digital outs, we've got optical, and we've got a BNC rather than usual sort of RCA connector, which is better. BNC is more suited for digital purposes, really, being 75 ohm. And then just two RCAs for the output to amplify. Decent quality sockets. That's it, really. Yeah, again, what more do you need? It is just a very, very purist in lots of ways, it's really. And also, I just want to, go back to the front panel quickly, because I forgot to mention something. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the door, really, the actual door mechanism. People will be watching this saying, why hasn't it got a standard draw mechanism? Why are they doing that? Why are they just being quirky? Are they just being quirky just for the sake of it? Not at all. There's two really good reasons for this. One is costing. You're not paying for all the mechanism. You know, you've got motors, you've got all the draw mech, you've got the carriage that drops onto the. It's a very complicated mechanism, an automated drawer. It does various things. There's various little cogs and cams and belts. And as the door comes out, you put the disc on and it closes in, and the whole mechanism has to drop onto the CD. It has to actually physically move the mech. Now, that's not that easy to keep isolated. The potential for wear is quite high. What also happens is some people will open using the button, but when they close it, they'll push it closed. And this used to be a thing with NAD particularly, was really prone to this, but if people insisted on closing just by giving it a tap and then it'd close itself, they'd start to derail, so it'd jump cogs and that sort of thing. And you get to the point where it wouldn't read discs anymore. And also drive belts on mechanisms, when the drive belt gets tied, it'll stop reading discs. So there's all sorts of little quirky reliability issues with it, and the costing as well. So that's why it's like this, and sonically as well, it means that more money is going into the player, not into the draw mech. Also means it's easier to keep the whole mech stable and in position and isolated, because you're not having to accommodate a movable base, really. So it makes a lot of sense to do this. The drawbacks are, they tend to be a top loader. I mean, there's only, I think Naim are the only ones who've actually found a way of doing, I don't think they make one now, but I found a way of having a pull out. It's like a manual drawer that pulled out and you put the puck on and all this sort of thing. Most of the top loaders like this. The Riga one comes up like this. The old Naim stuff used to, the Naim 555 and the CDI and the ones I mentioned before, all sort of lifted up on the top. That means the shelf that you put it on has to have enough space above it to accommodate that. I mean, obviously, even if you've got a lift up drawer, you still have to accommodate the fact your hand has to go in. So if you need to be able to have space to get your hand in above. So there's still an issue in that respect, but this is a little less problematic in that respect. Really, it's still there, but it's not quite as bad as if your lid's up, you have to be able to get your hand onto the top of the lid to pull it down as well. So it's a nice solution. It is a really nice solution. So yeah. So that's the Exposure CD player. Long time coming, but I think it's going to be really worth it. I mean, at one point I thought it was never going to arrive, if I'm honest, because it just seemed to be going on for so long. But they've got over all the issues they were having with parts and all this sort of thing, and it's all sorted. But what's going to be interesting, actually, is finding out how it really does fit in sonically to the range you've got at the moment, because, like I said, the Atol CD200 is so strong. It's ridiculously good for the money, and it's going to be interesting. So I'll be hoping, get this running, do a bit of side to side with those, and I'll come back to you on that as what I think between the two. I suspect there might be a bit of a difference of sound signature, so it might be a little bit of a sort of personal preference or whatever, or even personal preference as to the operation of it and that sort of thing. We'll see. Yeah, that's for the future. As far as videos goes, I'm hoping to do a Planar 10 versus Naya, not so much sonically because, well, I can talk about that, but mainly because the build of it is different. It looks kind of the same from a distance, but when you get in close, there's some really good engineering, some really clever little bits of isolation and things going on. So I want to try, I'm going to have to try and work out how to film macro. I've tried it on an SLR, but it wouldn't work with my microphone. This won't get near anyway. You can't get more than about 2 feet away from anything before it loses focus. So I need to have a look at that one to see how I can do it. Anyway, I'm working on that. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else that's planned at the moment. Just waiting for a couple of things to come in, but we'll see. Don't forget to give a like and a subscribe because it always helps. The subscriptions are motoring on at the moment. Many thanks, anybody who's subscribed, many thanks to you for that, because it does make a big difference to how the channel comes up and everything. So that's really good. Thanks for that. That's it, yeah. I'll see you in a future video. Thank you very much.